Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
And now, as ever, to the front pages of the papers, and there indeed is Anthony Johnson on the front of the Observer, alongside the story picked up by almost everybody after the EU summit. EU threatens Theresa May on trade talks and its citizens' rights, things we will talk about later in the programme, of course. There's the Mail on Sunday. Theresa May has given an interview, which we'll be talking about shortly. I'll wage war on pensions cowboys, people like Philip Green she's talking about there. And there is the McCann story, again, on almost every front page, almost every paper, one way or another. It's on the front of the Sunday Mirror as well. There's the Sunday Times. May is living in another galaxy, says Juncker, after those apparently difficult meeting with Theresa May. We'll be talking a lot about more. There is Donald Trump, after his 100 days, saluting somebody or other. And there, finally, Sunday Telegraph. May rejects Brussels' demands, so they've turned that story around. And again, the boxing story, Joshua there. So lots and lots to talk about. Welcome to you all. Rachel, we'll be talking about you in many ways later on, but let's start off with The Sun. I think it's the first story you've chosen.
Yeah, well, this is The Sun's report of yesterday's very rapid Brussels summit, in which they decided in 4 days to adopt their position, negotiating position, and the three top lines seem to be settle the rights of EU citizens, make sure there's no hard border in Ireland,
yeah.
And make sure you pay your divorce bill before we start talking about your free trade deal.
Pay up first, in
exactly.
short, absolutely. Oh,
and David Davis, sorry, just to say that out of that politically, yeah. David Davis is admitting that this is going to be, confrontational and extremely difficult.
Well, this is, I mean, again, it underlines a deceitful premise to this whole general election, because Theresa May has argued that the more people vote for her, the more seats she gets, the stronger her mandate to go to the EU. The EU don't care how many votes she gets. They don't care how many seats they have. And I think there is a sense of denial, which the Conservative government is promoting, which is that we are going to have a strengthened negotiating hand when we're up against a whole range of EU states who have no, why would they care about the election?
No logic.
Fraser, do you think the number of seats that Theresa May wins will have an effect on these negotiations?
Yeah, I certainly do. I mean, of course, anybody who negotiates abroad, they're asking, does this person have a strong mandate at home or a weak one? Theresa May's got no mandate right now. She can hardly command the complete loyalty of her own cabinet. I mean, so she goes for a general election, she comes back with a landslide, on a personal manifesto dictated by her own chief of staff. She would then go to Brussels as somebody who is a very rare thing in Europe, a prime minister who is able to come back and collect as many working class votes as middle class votes. And it would help. I'm not saying it'd be transformative.
Well, just as an example, I mean, if you give Greece as an example, they held a referendum.
67%, and
I mean,
that didn't do them any good at all.
Overwhelming majority to reject the EU deal. The EU just went, why do we care? We have no interest in what you're doing.
Can I just pick Fraser up on one thing before we move on, which is...
Well, the new Liberal Democrat attack lines.
No, I haven't heard them, but... Presumably the reason she wants a strong mandate is that whatever the deal is, whether it's a bad deal, a good deal or no deal, it will be voted through the Commons without too much stress and opposition. Yeah, Isn't that the entire point of having a mandate for this?
I want to follow that up, if I may.
Sorry.
Because the money issue is the first issue that's coming up, and there's talk of anywhere between 40 and 60 billion pounds. It may be a lot less than that, but it does look, does it not, as if Theresa May is going to have to agree some kind of financial settlement early in the process. And at the moment, I would have thought that kind of settlement would not get through the Conservative Party in the House of Commons.
Well, certainly the Foreign Secretary is against anything like this happening. I mean, Theresa May herself says this is the Sunday Telegraph splash, but she's dismissed it as a negotiating position. We're in talks about talks right now. Yeah. And they have said, look, until we talk about the divorce bill, we're not going to talk about trade. Yeah. Now, that is not Britain's understanding of how the talks should carry out, but how much leverage does Britain have to tell the rest of the EU how the negotiations are going to take place? The one weapon Theresa May does have is, will she walk away if she doesn't get what she wants?
And over the cliff?
Well, she used to say that no deal was better than a bad deal. Apparently, she stopped saying that now.
Well, so we'll find out shortly. But that was one of the questions that the Mail on Sunday put to her in her first newspaper interview, Owen.
Well, good luck with your interview, because the Mail have got absolutely nothing. I mean, it is insulting, I have to say, to call a general election and have nothing of any substance to say on any domestic issue. I mean, if you read, I mean, look, it's quite interesting. Talks about going to church, very nice. no hard Brexit or soft Brexit, cliches. I think the problem is, you know, it's kind of twofold. What you're going to end up with is a situation, can I guess how the interview is going to pan out? Basically, Linton Crosby has implanted implants into people's Tory MPs'
We're very
brains.
much hoping that people will carry on watching. That's what I would say.
And I'm saying what she will do is she will avoid saying anything of substance and stick to lines which she's going to repeat over and over again until people's ears bleed. The other point, though, is why would anyone trust a single word that she says? She came into your studio over and over again and said that there would, and other studios saying there would be no snap election. There was. The premise she gave for giving one was that she was being obstructed in terms of Brexit in the Houses of Parliament. That's a straightforward untruth, overwhelmingly got through the House of Commons. National insurance, do you remember that? A Tory manifesto commitment, she went back on it. You can't
Not surprisingly,
trust,
you don't think you can trust her.
but you can't trust, whatever policies or pledges she comes up with this election, you can't trust a word that this woman says.
The public do disagree. Her approval rating is off the scale. Never has any Prime Minister since polling began been so liked in the country. Now, this is, people in Westminster might say, we can't believe she promised she wouldn't do something, then she did it. This is exactly true. She calculated that she could get away with it. People would think that Jeremy Corbyn was such a bad alternative that she could pretty much do anything she wants. And so far, like it or lump it, she is right.
And watching all of this debate, lots of people are changing their minds and moving all over the place. And Rachel Johnson, you have written in the Mail on Sunday about your decision to move from the Conservatives, or from no, because you'd left the Conservatives already, to the LibDems. And that caused a little bit of trouble in the family, I would imagine.
Well...
What did the top brothers, what did the big brother say? Large brother?
That's got to remain a private conversation.
Did he call you a mugwump?
No, I don't know. Still don't know what a mugwump is. But I mean, I think I've been completely consistent in my position on Europe, and I think this is a single issue election. And on that single issue, this is a protest vote that I'm making, and I want to draw use whatever platform I have as a freelance columnist and occasional appear on television to draw attention to the fact that we could be going over a cliff in a hard Brexit, and only one party out of all our parties is offering the voters a second look at the deal, whether it's a bad deal, a good deal, a red, white and blue deal, or a Theresa May Brexit.
Are you going to stand?
And I think that is incredibly important, because as things stand, with a Tory election landslide, there is not going to be another look at the Commons has a vote but no veto over the eventual deal. But if it go to a second referendum, the country has another go. I think that's crucially important, because
and you have actually joined the party.
I have actually joined the party.
You can't stand as a candidate because you've joined too late, as it were. But there is speculation in one of the papers that they might stand as, they might want you as the London mayoral candidate. A second Johnson for London mayor.
I think that was my own paper possibly making mischief to embarrass me, but I don't know. And
you wouldn't rule it out then, Rachel?
She's not ruling it out. We can all see that.
I'm not ruling anything in or out. But
When are you standing in Uxbridge?
There's a very, very good candidate in Uxbridge who had a stonking majority when he was re-elected in 2015.
You have said in your piece, Rachel, that your brother Boris has offered a false good of bill of sale.
I agree with that, and I've said that to him. I think that all the offer on the table is now, everything on the table before June the 23rd is now off the table. From money back to the NHS. To control of immigration, which David Davis has said we need to have immigration, to the single market. But business desperately needs us to stay in the single market, and we're going to have to leave the single market. It's all lose-lose.
Can I turn to the next big battleground we haven't talked about, which is, of course, Scotland, and Ruth Davidson has a big splash there. Fraser Nelson, I think I read in your organ last week that Theresa May is now very, very close to Ruth Davidson. They've got each other on speed dial. They're talking all the time. Is that right?
Yes, I mean, Ruth Davidson is achieving miracles for the Conservatives in Scotland. There was a poll a few days ago showing that a third of Scots intend to vote Tory in the next election. I never thought I would see that again. I mean, it's been 25 years since the Tories had more than one seat in Scotland. Now the polls suggest they might get as many as 12 seats. Even my own seat, my family's seat of Murray up in the northeast, where Angus Robertson, the SNP leader in Westminster, that is now the top Tory target there. So, you know, something is going... What's happening in Scotland, of course, is that the idea of another referendum is filling unionists with dismay. But Jeremy Corbyn is a bit ambivalent about this, as he is ambivalent about Brexit. So Ruth Davidson, somebody who only joined the Tories a few years ago herself, is able to say, look, if you really didn't want this referendum, only one party can stand up to it. And this has has given the Conservatives the entree, which I personally never thought they would have.
Very, very interesting in Scotland. One of the dangers of these campaigns is we talk endlessly about process and polls and who's going to do worse or badly, and we don't talk about the policies. So, Owen, you've chosen, I think, a spread on Labour policies in the Mirror.
Talking about substance in an election, honestly, this is...
I'm sorry, we'll be brief.
So this is Labour's offer in terms of on workers' rights, for example, a £10 living wage for the minimum wage. We've gone through the longest fall in living standards since the 19th century, since the Napoleonic Wars, in fact. That had also reduced the burden on the taxpayer, lessen in-work benefits. But also, critically, that workers would have the same rights from day one. As we know, when it comes to immigration, one of the big concerns people have is undercutting. So what Labour are proposing here is measures to stop that from happening. Now, I suppose what Labour have to do without going to, there's two extremes, isn't there? No substance, sticking to a message over and over again, lots of ideas, but without a clear message. So what Labour has to do now with all of these policies is have clear, sharp messages that can cut through. You
were somewhat critical of Jeremy Corbyn in the past. You've seen him in the first week or so of this campaign so far. What do you make of the performance?
Well, I think what's interesting is, Theresa May has avoided the general public. You've had these stage-managed rallies. And I think what will be interesting to see if it cuts through, but actually having a grassroots campaign where you go around the country, where it's not managed, where you don't get in an office and tell all the workers they have to go home and then parachute in party activists. So it's a more kind of grassroots, natural campaign. And as we know, whatever you think about Jeremy Corbyn, what does he relish? He relishes campaigning. He relishes going out there.
The entire mainstream media have gone, nah, you're rubbish to Jeremy Corbyn all the way through. Is there a chance that the mainstream media are wrong and this is a man who can turn things round?
Absolutely. I mean, look, I think it's amazing how everybody thinks this election is so in the bag when you think that all the elections previously, for the last 3 years, we've had nothing apart from people like me being confounded. So I would be surprised if there are no surprises in this election. I don't think Jeremy Corbyn is going to win, but the Tory majority might not be in the sort of 150 scale that some people are talking about. It might be a lot more modest. Now, of course, the question is what happens to Labour after this. Now, it could well be that Jeremy Corbyn rids himself of lots of the more moderate Labour MPs and has got an even stronger hold on his party. But I think so much is in play, and who knows, even a LibDem revival ought not to be ruled out completely.
OK, let's end by talking about politics elsewhere. You have a tablet there, Owen, with Trump's 100 days discussed on it.
Well, I'm relieved it's been 100 days in one sense, because some people thought we'd been nuclear Armageddon by this point. But it's been a chaotic 100 days, as would have been expected. He said in an interview last week, which amused some, that it was harder than he expected. Who would have thought being a reality TV star was not quite as hard as being president of the United States? But look, what we're seeing, we're seeing sharp kind of U-turns, vacillations. What I think is disturbing at the moment is he's now returning to the kind of, I suppose, white nationalism. Steve Bannon is being rehabilitated. He's now angrily yesterday talking about the need to build, of course, the wall and make Mexico...
Do we think the wall will actually ever be built now? That's the question. Because if he doesn't build the wall, that's his biggest single campaign promise broken.
Well, I think what he's going to do in the next congressional elections is try to dare the Democrats to vote against. But the idea Mexico is ever going to pay for this wall. I mean, we'll see. I mean, it'll be interesting at the moment because obviously we've got this brinkmanship over North Korea and. Sorry, I should stop there. I'm talking too much.
I know you're going out to campaign. You're going to be on the doorstep. Rachel, are you going to be on the doorstep? Are you actually knock on doors and talk to voters and say, "I'm Rachel Johnson, vote Lib Dem"?
I am very tempted to campaign in my constituency of Kensington and Chelsea because we're a Remain constituency with a Brexit.
As so many London ones
with a Brexit
Tory who was re-elected Twickenham or somewhere more on the line. I mean, Kensington and Chelsea.
I'm open to suggestions, but I have to be careful.
Career very interesting. Well, you can all phone in your suggestions. Polite suggestions, please, only. Thanks all very much indeed for that.
Well, let's take a look at what's on the front pages this morning. The Observer leads with EU leaders telling Theresa May to guarantee the rights of their citizens in the UK after they agreed their negotiating principles yesterday. But the Prime Minister tells the Sunday Telegraph that these principles are just a negotiating position and she will stick to her own demands. The Sunday Times says European leaders flatly rejected Mrs May's request to discuss a future trade deal early in the negotiations. The Prime Minister will wage war on irresponsible bosses if she wins the election. That's according to the Mail on Sunday. And the Sunday Express claims Scotland Yard's main suspect in the Madeleine McCann case is a woman. Madeleine's disappearance is also the lead for the Mirror, and the Sun on Sunday alleges that Wayne Rooney took part in a 3 a.m. drinking session. Well, to talk about all those stories and plenty more, we're joined now by the CEO of Pimlico Plumbers, Charlie Mullins, the author and journalist Eve Pollard, and Guardian columnist Polly Toynbee. Hello, thanks.
Good morning.
For being with us this morning. Lots to chew over in the newspapers today. It kind of feels like we should start off with the EU, because we've got a bit of a teaser, really, of what the kind of EU negotiating position is going to be. It apparently took them just 4 minutes at the special summit to decide. I mean, they're seeming remarkably unified on this, which is very unlike the usual state of play for the EU.
I think all of the work had been done before, so they were just gathering to rubber stamp what all of their aides and everybody else had already agreed. But there it is. I mean, that's what they always said. We're not going to change our rules or break our rules. If you want to leave, that's fine. And we've always had, now they're saying that Theresa May seems to be on another galaxy. She seems to think that we can change all of their rules to suit us. But what really matters, front page of the Observer today, is the very first thing they want is to guarantee the rights of their citizens. And we really need it. 55,000 EU citizens working for the NHS. We really, really need that. And nobody can understand why she won't agree to give them the right to stay, and indeed our citizens, which they're very willing to do as well, the same rights to stay over there.
You need that guarantee, don't you, that UK citizens living in other countries will also have their rights.
Yeah, well,
but that's what they're offering.
Yeah. But you see, this was regarded, and Keir Starmer made the point this week, that we should obviously let all the people stay. And on a human level, of course, that's right. But of course, the Tories were saying this is going to be a bargaining chip. This is going to be one of the things that we have in our arsenal to say, well, if you don't agree to this or that, we might have to say all of the people who are living in England or UK, let's face, will probably have to go. Of course, that was never going to happen.
I mean, that's madness, though, if you think about it. There's so much uncertainty at the moment. I've got a few EU workers myself, and they're very uncertain. Are they going to be here? Are they going to be allowed to stay? Should they be buying an house? You know, so it's probably one of the things you should get done straight away, surely.
It would be so easy to do. It
it's
seems
not
to
going to be a bargaining
and the idea
chip,
of a bargaining chip. What about all of our people in
the Costa del Sol?
You know, they are not bargaining chips. They are human beings, and that's a very, very reasonable opening bid by the 27 countries.
But if you think about it,
we're being very obstinate.
London will come to a standstill if they send all the workers back and stop free movement.
Of course, London would come to a standstill, there's no doubt about it, but it obviously shows that it's not going to be us to decide whether it's a soft Brexit or a hard Brexit. It's in their court, and they've decided it'll be hard.
And we should have said that right from the start. You know, we don't have power over this. We walk away.
Is anybody shocked by that? It was always going to be an hard Brexit with her?
Well,
you always argued that.
Well, I mean, you know, let's be fair, you know, it's like a divorce. No one really comes out the other end sort of very happy, do they?
And you shouldn't send all the letters through the lawyers. But also...
Well, it looks like Theresa May might have a secret weapon up her sleeve. Theresa twists the stiletto. This is the headline in the Mail, which has got an interview with the Prime Minister Theresa May. I quite like this cushion she's got as well. I can deal with anything if I have the right pair of shoes. But it's quite a personal interview here, isn't it?
For her, it's a very personal interview. I mean, she starts off on the front page, her serious piece is she's going to watch for people who actually take liberties with pensions, which is perfectly all right because the whole BHS saga has gone on and made a lot of people very unhappy. But inside, she talks, I mean, she has a go at Jeremy Corbyn. That's what she does.
Surprise.
A surprise, surprise.
What is it?
And of course, the interesting thing that's now coming out is even if Jeremy Corbyn does very badly, he still might not go, so she might still be facing him across the crowded House of Commons. But she does talk about her favourite films. Interestingly, Casablanca, The Fugitive, and You Only Live Twice.
You can bet they were chosen by Linton Crosby. Every one of these is manufactured. They're bog standard. There is nothing remotely original or interesting about any of her choices.
Interestingly, then she also talks about her cookery things. Now, she is very reserved. She is very careful. But, I mean, I happen to know that she likes Yotam Ottolenghi's books. And one of the recipes, she makes spicy food.
And that's quite difficult, isn't it? I'm not a great cook, I have to say.
No, but it's lots of detail.
And
there's lots of things you can't find or you have to go to specialist places to buy, absolutely.
I'd have thought one of her favourite films would be The Assassin or something like that. Come on.
But if this is the most warm and human she can get, and she's really trying, it's pretty damn chilly and cold. I mean, there really is nothing of interest. She plays everything with a dead bat. You know, all of her interviews. And of course, you know, when she asks about Corbyn, weak and unstable. And you think, no, please find some original
But on the
words,
other hand,
something.
Charlie,
What do you
her
think?
ratings?
Do you see much warmth in the Prime Minister, or do you agree with Polly that she's a bit of a cold?
Well, I mean, it's fairly obvious what she's like. I mean, you know, she's ruthless, and I mean, you wouldn't want one at home like her, would you? That's for sure.
But look at the ratings. I mean, she is very cool. She's very reserved for a politician. I mean, would-be MPs are now pouring their hearts out at this stage of an election normally, but she is. This is the wildest I've seen her get.
But the important thing is, I think she's going to do a great job, and we've obviously got a tough time coming up, and I don't see anybody better to do the job than Theresa May.
Well, we've got on that
you think the job is. If you think it's hard Brexit, which you don't, it's quite scary.
But look, at the end of the day, whether it's soft Brexit or hard Brexit, as you said, it's not us that's going to dictate it.
It's going to be them that's going to dictate it. And here we are. I mean, this is where we are. I didn't want to be here, but this is
I think there comes a point where if the deal is really bad, a strong and stable Prime Minister would turn back to the people and say, this is going to be dreadful. Are you sure this is what you really want to do?
You could be right.
Well, that's what
and
I don't want.
And she won't do that. She won't do that, however bad the deal is.
But
That's what's frightening.
She comes up with no deal is better than a bad deal. I mean, in my world, half a loaf of bread is better than no bread at all, isn't it?
Yeah, in everybody's world, that's true.
Is it? Good.
I think that's true.
I'm quite keen to talk about this story in the Mail on Sunday about David Cameron's new shed. This is extraordinary, this. The former Prime Minister forks out £25,000 for a designer garden shed, and there's a picture of him there looking rather jolly and proud. I'm just flabbergasted, really, that he's done no interviews, really, at all, and has kept it in very low profile, and yet he's decided to come out, of all things, and talk about his garden shed.
It is the grandest shed you have ever seen. £25,000, you could put a homeless family in there. Actually, I think he ought to offer it to Theresa May for her next rally. She has these rallies now with tiny groups of people, they can just about fit in the shed, of loyal Tory supporters. I think she could have her next meeting in there.
What is interesting now is you get prime ministers who've been prime ministers and they leave still young. I mean, look at Tony Blair, been around forever, and we're going to have David Cameron, who's around forever. May I say, lovely colours.
But don't you think he's entitled to this? 25 grand he spent. He's now got himself somewhere. He wants to write his book in it. His kids want to use it. His wife wants to use it. I don't think it's a big deal, man. I think the guy's worked hard, and now he's going to enjoy his life in a, well, it looks like a caravan, doesn't it?
It does.
No, I don't see anything wrong with him.
It is because of their youth that it's all changed. People used to become prime minister when they're much older, and then they go home, they drink a few drinks and die.
Don't you think it's peculiar, though, that because he's a man who knows about politics and image, it's not a great thing to do in the middle of an election campaign. Fine for him to have his own, you know, we all know he's a very wealthy man, and that's fine.
And he's got 3 kids.
There's something quite sort of in your face about saying, here's me and my very expensive caravan.
Well, apparently he's trying to help out the guy who's made the shed, maybe, though, because it's the blog of this guy's...
Yeah, but it looks lovely.
So maybe he's trying to do...
Maybe he's trying to let on that he's a pretty normal guy, he wants to take a bit of time out. I mean, it's probably either that or a train set, so I'm sure he'll get more value out of this.
Are you a man who enjoys the shed?
No, not at all. No, I don't.
You don't go and hide in your shed?
No, and I know that... I see there's a great big wood-burning stove to keep it warm.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's got
quite nice in the summer, creepy crawlers in the winter.
Painted by Farrow.
He's got a lot of time on his hands now, hasn't he? So he needs to do something. And look, maybe that's a way of getting away from...
Let's just remember, though, that this is the man who has left us in the hole that we're in. Let's just remember that the disastrous referendum which has split this country in half was all because of him trying to sort of shore up the right wing.
You can't say he can't buy a shed because of that policy.
No, I just think that we don't love him. We don't say he is a great guy who's done a great job. He is the worst Prime Minister we've had.
Really?
Oh, yes.
Oh, no, there are worse.
No, you can't think of anybody who's left the country in a worse state than he has.
No, come on.
All right. Well, have we ever been more divided?
Employment's gone up. The country was booming at one time. Things have never been so good.
Yeah, but now we've got... It'd be fine if it wasn't... well, it wouldn't be fine because of the huge cuts we've had, but the Brexit disaster is going to overshadow everything else for many years to come.
I know I'm going to harp on about it, but that was because of the lies that was told again, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, the NHS, 350 mil.
Absolutely, the bus.
You know, but you don't blame David Cameron for it, even though he's the one who...
Of course not. I mean,
we never needed a referendum.
I blame the lies. I also blame the people that was only interested in their own position. You know, Theresa May, David Davis, Liam Fox. All that was about was where they want to get. And even Boris.
And also Labour didn't really knock it, did it?
Thank you for a very lively pay-per-view this morning. Lots of fun. Thank you.
I've been getting away